Hey, what's up? And welcome back to another episode of the She Can't Quit podcast. We're continuing on with the series that has been highly requested, and I'm so glad it is because I absolutely love talking about it. If you missed the first episode, I will make sure to link it down below in the show notes. If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching over on YouTube, it'll be in the slide deck as well as the description box. But the series that we're continuing today is how to start a business in 2024 as a mom. The landscape of entrepreneurship has changed so much, as well as entrepreneurship is something that I think is being seen again as something that is possible, which for someone like me, it makes me excited that it's almost like an homage and a new start and the spirit of the American dream behind it. And especially coming from the millennial generation, I feel like it's something that I hold really special, and it's skill sets that I can teach to my kids to show them that they can do anything that they put their mind to. I always go back when I'm doing something and I think about me being my business nerd that I am. I love watching shows like Undercover Boss and Shark Tank and whatnot, because every single brand that you go and encounter throughout the day, whether it's from the shirts that you wear to the shoes that you wear to the stores and the brands that are in those stores, that started with somebody's idea. And sometimes, especially us creatives, those ideas come at the oddest moments, but they turn into the best stories, and they turn into an even bigger vision and an impactful mission. This is why I love talking about this series. This is why I love answering questions in the DMs and creating content around it, because I truly believe that entrepreneurship is something that currency has so many different meanings, and you can make it anything that you want. Okay, so let's dive into this episode. So in the first episode, we went over how to find your space in the entrepreneur journey and how to know if you're right for the entrepreneur world and kind of finding your space in there. So head back there if you haven't already watched it, but if you have, we're moving on to how to find your business idea and the one that you want to stick with and really fulfill that vision with. So you are already here watching this. You've already known that you have that spark and it's something that keeps you up in the middle of the night. But maybe you're like me and multi-passionate and many others in the world who you just can't decide on what idea you want to do, or honestly, you want it to fit your current lifestyle, because as a planner, as a recovering perfectionist, it is okay to choose something and have it evolve, and even down the road, be okay with accepting that your vision can pivot and it can just have another chapter. So that doesn't mean that you're bouncing from thing to thing. There's a way to grow it strategically and really allow for that white space and that creativity, especially if you're a multi-passionate. But where you start really, really does matter. In today's episode, I'm breaking down a unique way to find your business idea that will stick in something that feels fulfilling and fitting for your current season of life and motherhood. Okay, so the way that I've broken these down and the way that I love to share about these is there are 3 different spaces where you can build your business idea to thrive. And I'm going to break each of those down, give some examples, and then share who it is best for, what kind of person this business realm would be good for, as well as how to get started in it. Now, as you can imagine, there is so much to each one of these. So this is a very, very brief skim over the top of what these are. But if you would like me to go more in depth of how I would suggest someone either getting started, maybe even digging into how I got started in the digital marketing world or any other thing, I'm happy to do an episode and break that down even more and continue putting that in the mini series if it is helpful and a great resource for you. The question we all grew up with, or the way of thinking we all grew up with, if you have that question, odds are somebody else does too. So please feel free to DM it to me over on Instagram or go ahead and drop it down in the comments below and I'm happy to answer it. So let's dive into the first one. And this one's going to be not a shock at all, especially in today's world, but there is so much to it and so much freedom. So after we talked about it in the first episode, going around thinking about what kind of space and time you have for this season. And we all know, and as someone who has my oldest, I have 3 kiddos. My oldest is going to be 9 in January, and my youngest right now is 4.5. So definitely not in the baby phase anymore. We're in the busy kid stage. So things have definitely looked a lot different than how I would enter a business idea or start crafting it out and how my business would look compared to the early newborn days. So the first realm of business ideas that you can choose from is going to be from the world of creators and lifestyle influencers. Now, when it comes to approaching this realm, the limit is endless. There is so much potential here. And there's a lot of different ways that you can make this work for you. It's just being consistent and strategic. And consistent, I feel like, is one of those words that is spit out so much and almost makes you feel like you have the nails on the chalkboard feeling when you hear it. But it's the honest truth. And that's going to be it with honestly any business idea, is sticking to it consistently, showing up and doing it as you are the business owner and not just a hobbyist. So when it comes to content creators, there is so much more behind the scenes than you know. This really comes down to figuring out how you want to structure this and how you want to get into it. And honestly, there's so much white space and creativity with finding that. So if you're not quite sure, I highly recommend just starting and figuring out along the way of if you're trying to figure out what kind of content you want to create, where you want to create this content, and whatever feels really great and aligned, that's where you're going to feel it's the most stickiest, and that's where you're going to keep creating from. Because when it comes down to being a content creator, people can feel the energy that's transferred through all that content creation, including things like illustrations, graphics, posts, when it comes to like creating copy and whatnot. So I highly recommend just sitting with that for a second when you think that you want to pick that particular space or niche or type of content, and honestly just be open for trying things. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And honestly, I will tell you from someone who's been there, it's 100% easier to put yourself out in front of strangers than your own people. And the more that you do it, the easier that it gets. And you really do grow a thick skin. But at the same point too, you have a lot of people that are cheering you on, including me. So if you ever need any love, please come over to my corner of squares or over on YouTube, and I'm happy to cheer you on. Okay, so let's dive into the specifics here. So when it comes down to who this would be good for, it's definitely someone who, one, would be utilizing their social media. So maybe it's you become aware of some really great products, some really great tips and tricks. And honestly, I want you to think about what makes you excited when you are consuming things. Do you love looking on TikTok for some really engaging, funny skits? We are in the world of really fun media and I love it. I always have this moment thinking about like how our kids are going to see this world in 20 years versus coming from someone who remembers times when there was not the internet, how different it is. And I get excited for them, but also it's just this new age kind of thing that just feels so odd still sometimes. So I feel very privileged in the world and very excited and grateful that my kids can grow up to be content creators if they wanted, because it was something that if I would have said something like that out loud, yet alone what I do now, there would have been some stress in the family because there's no guarantee that it's successful, but that is a whole different tangent for another day. So this would be good for someone who often finds themselves getting really excited about content they are consuming, but also knowing that they feel confident in where they are at this place. So maybe you have really great recommendations or love looking for deals on Amazon. This is going to be the most unique way that you get into this business, is because you're really going to, especially these days, I did an episode on this not too long ago about authenticity that consumers can feel and really creating for value in a different term than how we've used it in marketing, but the trust and the know and the like factor that they talk about, your audience is really going to have to connect with you on a personal brand level versus good product and wanting to buy it. Because if they feel something sketchy or it feels like it's a sale or a scam, it's an immediate no, and it is a very slim chance that they're ever going to come back in your corner because you just gave them the ick vibe so bad. So no ick vibes here. We don't want that. So when it comes to this, I highly recommend making sure that you're staying aligned with yourself, your values, and really taking that time to sit down and kind of think about the problem you want to serve, the space that you want to work in, whether that's in motherhood, whether that is in budget-friendly family vibes. So if you're looking to make money in a business in the content creator world, then that's something I would kind of sit with first before going all in. And then it's coming down to figuring out where you want to do this content creation. And from someone who is a marketing strategist, I highly recommend picking a long form and a short form. And when you get down to this point, I do have a video showing you how to create your social media strategy for 2024, what's working, what's not working, and the trends we're seeing right now. And they're still pretty on par. So I'll link that video above in the card deck and then in the show notes as well if you would like to go there after this. When I recommend doing a long form or short form content, it is going to be something where you can do like YouTube, where you're kind of showing your life. This is where a vlogger or even a blogger would come into play. And there you have affiliate marketing as well as brand deals. Now, don't count those out, because this is where, when it comes to you finding your voice on this and finding your confidence more that you get, brand deals end up being a huge part of your income behind the scenes that people don't see. So when you're choosing brand deals or making your dream list, which I highly recommend doing when you're starting out, you need to make sure that these brands are someone that you would recommend even without getting paid, but having a collaboration where a brand has your back at the same time as you making sure that you're aligned with them, that's the golden ticket that you want to stick with. So making sure that you're aware of that from the beginning, I think, is key to making it in the content creator world. Now, when it comes to picking your short form content, I mean, you have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and then long form would be something like blogging or vlogging over on YouTube. So there's a lot to pick from. You also have affiliate marketing with the Amazon storefront and being an Amazon associate, as well as Like to Know. Now, those are all based on affiliate marketing. So anything that people buy there, they have a special link and then you earn a commission from there as well. So there's a lot of fluidity. There's a lot of places to make money, but at the same time too, it's going to come down to your key people that you're talking to. So let me give you a couple pointers on that and where to get started on this. If this is something that you've already thought about, you've already looked into it. One, that's going to be figuring out what kind of space you want to be in. This is either, like I said before, are you going to want to be talking to moms? And I really want you to get nitty gritty with who your ideal audience is. What is their problem? What do they find themselves looking for when they're going to social media? Is it budgeting tips? Maybe they're working on paying off consumer debt and trying to get their finances on track because they're really looking for their own definition of freedom and chasing that. Maybe it is all for recipes. Maybe you love creating recipes behind the background. Maybe it's cleaning. I mean, there's so many different things. So I want you to find kind of what you love consuming and going from there, because that's going to be in the third step, the next episode in the series that I'm going to do, because that's where it's going to get very specific, and that's going to be where you find your gap of what makes you different from anyone else. So don't get stressed out just yet if you feel like everyone's out there and there's too many people doing this. There is always room in a niche. There is always a way that even though there's a million people doing exactly what you're doing, no one's going to do it the exact way that you do. And I have specific tips to make sure that you stand out in this as well. Okay, so once you've defined your audience, I want you to kind of go to where, one, you love consuming your media, and two, where your actual audience is consuming their media. There is a slight difference in demographics between the platforms, but honestly not too much, but it's going to also come down to what you love creating and going from there. So like I said, one long form, one short form. For me, going on YouTube, I absolutely love talking in front of video. I don't mind it. Of course, it was a learning curve. I did not know how to do this before, and I'm still learning, and I'm 100% okay with that. One of the key lessons to entrepreneurship is you are always evolving and always learning, and you'll always be terrified stepping into something new, but it's like this weird thrill. Entrepreneurs, especially multi-passionate entrepreneurs, we're a little nuts, but we go for the thrill there. We're like adrenaline junkies of the entrepreneur world. So once you figure that out, that's where you're going to start creating your content strategy and going through and figuring out what kind of content that you want to put in your brand and how that's going to translate into whether it's affiliate marketing, or if you're going for the content creator realm and doing some brands, and then you're going to be doing some brand outreach. So those are all very specific things, but ideally when it comes to this video, like I said, it's just a skim off the top to figure out what realm you want to be in. Okay, so let's talk about the second realm where you can create your business ideas from, and this is going to be for my corporate girlies, for anyone who maybe went to college for a different skill set or has a different life skill set that they're utilizing. Maybe they didn't even, maybe went to college for something totally different. Fun fact, I went to college for biomed and nursing, and I do not use those skills anymore. This can also be for someone who is self-taught on something and really has mastered their gift. So this is going to be the educational based realm. So this is for maybe a hobby that you have thought about monetizing and just have kind of been sitting with it. Maybe, like I said, from the corporate world, and you are wanting to help that. I've worked with lots of clients who have come from the corporate world and they didn't love the box that the corporate world put them in, but they have the skill set and they just had to transfer it to the entrepreneur world, which is always so fun to see. So it's a skill set that can be utilized. And this can be anything from doing like business systems to something like teaching crocheting or pottery. I mean, the world is endless, but what it comes to and where the business idea comes from is creating educational resources around it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get started on. But first, let me tell you who this would be good for, because these are the 3 questions that I would ask you if this is what you were possibly thinking. What questions do you find people asking yourself more often than not? And usually this is someone teaching something. So maybe it's tips on organization. Maybe it's tips on social media. Maybe it's tips on, like I said, knitting or drawing. I mean, in these days, the world is endless for what you can create products and offers around to monetize. Okay, the second question, once you kind of have that idea in your mind, is if this were a skill that were taught, would you pay for it? Now, some of these ideas are going to be pretty niche specific, but there's a way around that. But if it's something, honestly, that if you saw it and you would be like 100%, I want to sign up for that, that looks so fun, then it's something that does deserve to go to the next step of validating this business idea, because there are a lot of people who are just like you. Odds are your audience is going to be 100% a reflection of who you are, and you're going to be working with other yous out there, including past versions of you. So I want you to keep that in mind too. So if that's a skill that you would pay for, then it deserves to go on to the next step of validating that business idea and going forward with it. The third question, and this is probably the most important for this specific space, for this realm, is if it's something you love doing, would you still do it even if you didn't make money from it? And I say this because oftentimes the one thing that can happen here is someone can take a hobby and continue making it a hobby because either comparison has slipped in the realm without asking, or not finding success fast enough. Because in the entrepreneur world, it is a roller coaster. Nothing is consistent, if that makes sense, but in the best ways. So attaching your skill set directly to income is not something I would recommend, because it can really screw with your mindset. So if this is something that you would still love doing even through the hard seasons, and it truly comes from a place of passion, I mean, even business strategists and marketing strategists like myself, like marketing and analytics is my passion. I would 100% do it for free, because it's just what I love doing. So most important question in that realm. Okay, so when it comes to how to get started, it's figuring out, 1, asking those 3 questions, like I said, but 2, kind of mapping out what specific hobby that would be, and if you would commit to yourself to putting that into something you would do consistently even without the income. And then it's going to be moving on to the phase of how you would love to share that, because like I said, there's anything from YouTube that goes into your marketing there, because you're going to be self-marketing yourself here, unless obviously you hire a specialist or an agency to help you do that. But here you can do everything from subscription basis and hosting it on your own website and creating a membership. You can also do something like a paid course. But at the end of the day, you will be the one who is self-marketing it. So getting really clear on your vision here is going to be key, and it can be as big and impactful as you want it to. And obviously, if it was your vision given to you and you've already thought about it, then you already know how big it is. There are multiple different ways to get started with that. But ideally, if you are thinking about monetizing a something that you can teach, that would be in the educational realm. All right, and the third realm is going to be utilizing and monetizing a skill set. This is where you're going to hear the term freelance. And I want to say I'm going to classify this as all of my creatives. And if you don't think you're creative, just hang on a second and I'll show you how this kind of fits in here. But you're going to have, this is going to be the creative-based business ideas, and it's going to go into two little subcategories here. So we have the ones that are physical products and then ones that are digital. This can go even further as we digest it. So for example, something that's going to be more digital is going to be anything freelance like writing or graphic design, even social media management services, anything super specific like that, even web design. And then you have something that's maybe more product based like candles or homemade goods, baking, catering, something along those lines. You can even go as far as that I would put under here, maybe it's a mobile bar service. And there are so many ways that you can make this unique to the space, because I feel like this is where people get in their heads and they start getting that comparison trap that comes in that makes you think that the niche is too saturated or the industry is too saturated wherever you're wanting to get into. But this is where I thrive in creating those unique perspectives. So like I said, this will be the next episode that we're heading into. When it comes to this realm, this is good for somebody specifically who is through and through the definition of an entrepreneur, someone who has an entrepreneur spirit, someone who is often learning new skills or has a skill and is continuously trying to master that skill. Someone who's always learning is going to be someone who thrives in this space. It's also going to be someone who's really self-motivated and goes and seeks out the answers rather than waiting for something to just come to them, because so much of this is going to be having to trust your instincts, and especially as an entrepreneur, develop that instinct and learning how to listen to it and listening when there's red flags and listening when something's not aligned. This is where that person's going to thrive when they lean into that. And so that's why I say someone who's like through and through an entrepreneur, this is where I think you will find the most fun in your business and the most creativity, which promotes that longevity in your business. How to get started in this is honestly to just start. Because you're going to have to accept that you're going to have to figure out your space, and you're going to have to figure out how to fail along the way, learn what's working and learn what's not working. And especially something as we've seen in the social media world and in the digital landscape in general, things change so fast. And it's, I think, the only thing that we can depend on that's consistent. So leaning away from the fear and leaning into the impact you can make is where you're going to really find that success. And in turn, you're going to find those successes and those achievements of those goals that you set in the beginning. So now that we went over those three realms, I hope that one of them has spoken to you and you've kind of gotten those ideas going. In the next episode, we're going to be going over how to figure out where that gap is of how yours is different than maybe a million other businesses that are providing the exact same service for you, and then how to validate that idea through market research. So if you have a specific idea or a specific industry you would love for me to provide an example on, please feel free to DM it to me over on Instagram or drop it in the comments on YouTube, and I can be as specific as possible for you to help you out so that you can figure out your exact business idea. And I just want to leave you with a few things that I think are the biggest lessons that if I could tell my younger self or like past Britt, then this is what I would tell you, because I feel like this is where the little breadcrumbs of success are hidden. But first, if you haven't been over in my corner of Instagram, then I just released over on the agency's page a free guide that helps walk through one of my favorite strategies to not only help you make your content work for you, but to convert those views that you're getting on your stories, on your content, and turn them into followers and some of your most beloved fans. So if you want to grab that guide, it's going to be linked down in the show notes as well as in the description box. Make sure to download it. It's a free guide to help you create a high converting Instagram bio. Okay, so my biggest tips that I would give my past self, the biggest lessons that I've learned, and I think honestly for you to hold on and put them in your pocket so that you can really make this vision come to life and create impact, is be excited to fail. I look back on my journey so much and I realize I have failed a lot, but I've won and found success even more. But had I let any moment of failure hold me back, I would have missed out on some of the biggest and most impactful parts of my story and of my success. And I always imagine this one graphic where somebody is digging through to find the diamonds, and you're all excited in the beginning, you're getting ready, you're already going through and doing all these goals and you're taking action on it, but then it starts to get hard. You start to question yourself, maybe even get some kickback or unwelcome feedback from others, which is going to happen. But people give up right before they find that success because it is a long-term game. And I think sometimes too, we are not aware or mindful of the magic that is actually happening in our season and is happening around us. And so I always make sure to remind myself that failure means that you're not standing still and that you are moving forward. And sometimes, especially in those hard seasons or the seasons where everything feels like it's going wrong, especially when you're a mom balancing the world of raising businesses and babies, it can be hard, but sitting there and being, mindful that you're still taking action, even if it looks different than any other business, any other person you're comparing yourself to, and including even past versions of yourself, you're still moving. You're not standing still. The next tip I'm going to tell you is to just keep your blinders on. Keep that excitement and the thing that lights you up, that burn in your belly when you're talking about your idea, or like you can't sleep because those are the thoughts that you're having at night when you're trying to go to bed because you're so excited about it. That's what I want you to keep in the forefront. And I want you to put your blinders on and just stay aligned with your vision, and learning also what those triggers are where they're starting to make you question. And I may have an unpopular opinion with this, but I fully believe, especially when you're in a place where you're really digging into raw energy and very vulnerable spaces to create this vision, because sometimes we have to do that and keep digging through layers of ourselves to keep putting this vision out there. There's going to be times where you're going to need to unfollow certain accounts or certain people, not because you don't align with them or you don't like them, but it's creating a trigger in your mind and the awareness that you have some self-love and self-work to do in those areas where it's drawing out that energy. So even if it has nothing to do with them, it has completely something to do with you, and you acknowledge that, it's okay to unfollow them. I highly recommend, I've even told people that if something on my account is triggering someone, or if they're leading into a place of comparison, unfollow and come back during another season, whether it's the next season, whether it's 2 weeks after, 2 months, 2 years. Come back when you feel that my space can provide something for you. And that is an energy that is helping you feel like your most aligned and imperfectly perfect self. And so I never get offended by that whatsoever. It's the self-work that I've done too. Myself too. I've had to unfollow people because I felt myself, even though they were so inspiring and I loved what they did, I found myself putting myself in comparison with them, and it was not allowing me to create from my creativity and create from my inspiration, and instead figuring out like where I compare with them. So it was just muddying the waters. And I think anyone would even tell you this. If they came up to you and said, I need to unfollow your account. I love you. I love all your stuff, but I need to unfollow it because I keep comparing myself to you because you're so awesome. They would understand. So don't worry about that when you are making that decision. It's honestly, it's just entering into someone's little store, into their corner squares, and coming back. You can always come back later in another season, and that's okay. Social media is always evolving. And I always tell people my Instagram corner of squares is always welcome for people who just want to pop in or people who want to stay. And I hope that no matter what, even as the seasons change, it's something that they can find a place where they feel comfortable and safe. But if they happen to have a season where they're just leaning into comparison, absolutely, my door's always open. Come on back when you feel ready. The next one, I think, is where most people are going to abandon ship. And this comes to other people's opinions and thoughts about you. And majority of the time, this is going to be that narrative that we put in our head. But you will get a lot of, especially if you're on the online space, you do get those people that come out with the most random stuff and you just have to let it roll off. And of course, that's easier said than done. I've absolutely cried over comments before or messages. I've had my share of some not so good ones, but I've also had some really, really great ones. And I always try to focus on those. But the thing at the end of the day, and the thing that I always tell myself that I can count on, is that people are going to judge you no matter what. And sometimes it's going to be the closest people in your circle. And I've definitely had that before, but I knew that if I gave up my vision and I stopped because of what someone else has said, and this is 100% my Enneagram 3 showing very proudly that I really get in that mindset where I'm just going to prove them wrong, but I've worked and done my self work and I've done what I needed to do and instead reframed it. So I want to share that with you too. Is that I know people will judge me no matter what, but I'm so rooted in what I need to do because it makes me a better person. It's the reason that I created this channel. It's the reason that I continue to share it. It's because when I work on my business and allow that part of myself to be nurtured and taken care of, I am a 1,000,000% times better mom and a better wife and a better friend. So I remind myself of that even when those comments come in, even when the not so fun things happen. But at the end of the day, instead of using my energy to prove them wrong and prove of how I can actually do it, I instead prove to myself that I can do it. And I do it for myself at the end of the day. And I show myself what I can do. In turn, I have 3 little reflections who are watching me to see if I follow through on what I say I want to do and the narrative that I put in my head with it. So I always keep that really close to me when I'm questioning myself, which as an entrepreneur happens more often than people think, but it's a lot behind the scenes, but it does happen, I would say daily, if not multiple times a day, because it's this constant readjusting as if you're driving down a highway and you have to make those little tiny micro turns. You have to keep on the path and keep aligned with that vision, where your destination, where you're going, regardless of the noise that's going on, regardless if there's a shoe being thrown from the back seat or a snack wrapper or there's really loud noise or if you just had the absolute worst day. The destination matters and it's the thing that you saw and was laid on your heart. You know where you're going. No one else has to understand where you're going or understand the reason you chose to get there, the path you chose to take. Honestly, the only thing that matters is your vision and how you decide to go after it and how you decide to show up for yourself. And if I'm putting energy into proving myself right and showing myself what I can do, I'm also choosing to not put any energy into those comments and that negative feedback that's coming in there because I just don't have any capacity or any space for it in my world. And I'm okay with that. And if you want to put this in a business perspective too, unless they're an invested buyer or an invested partner, their words literally have no say in it whatsoever. So at the end of the day, when you want to think about this from even if it's your best friend, your partner, your spouse, your mom, whoever that is, that maybe they're doubting you. And honestly, it's going to come from places where you didn't expect people to say something and they're going to voice their opinion. That's okay. That's their opinion. But unless they're involved in the business in some way or they are an invested partner, then honestly, their words have no value and no weight in there. And that's okay. Most importantly, I know that the vision you have is so big. And the thing is, the vision you have is so big. So when it comes to taking that journey to make this happen, there has to be a lot of patience and a lot of keeping aligned to that path, a lot of little micro turns as you're steering that car to your destination, because you're going to want to abandon ship when you feel like you're making no movement, when you feel like you're just going along and it's taking forever and you start to question yourself, or maybe it's when it's very silent and you wonder if you're even supposed to be doing this. And I want to just say that in a world where we have so many things that are instantaneous, and a world where there is a lot, especially these days, a lot of content being put out there of, I made this much amount of money in 10 hours or just in my baby's nap time. Even if that's true, which you got to make sure that you're vetting stuff, or you're taking things with a grain of salt because you're in your world. And at the end of the day, you decide what your vision looks like, and your journey is not supposed to look like anyone else. Not for a second. It's supposed to look like yours for a reason. And you don't even know all the good things in store for you. And coming from someone who's been there and who's had quite a journey over the last almost decade, I wouldn't trade any of it. Even the mean messages, even the nights where I've totally questioned myself, even navigating through a pivot where I thought that maybe I was making a huge mistake in walking away and pivoting something that I had built my entire income on. But I don't regret it one bit. And it was perfect. And it led me exactly where I am here. And it makes me the person that I am. So I want you to get excited about that and think about it for the long term. Your vision may change as things go on and you have new visions and it evolves. But if you have this vision, it's for the long haul. And there's going to be a lot of magic that happens in between that you're not going to want to miss. The secret is, at the end of the day, we are really great storytellers, but we also are in control of the narrative that we tell ourselves and the soundtrack that we put in our mind. So I want you to hold power to that. I hope that this was helpful for you. And like I said, we'll be doing another part of this series where we're going to be going over the market research and how to validate your business idea, as well as how to really make a unique space and a unique idea to fill that gap compared to the 1,000 other people that may be doing the exact same thing as you. So if that is something that you're interested in, make sure to follow along with the podcast or make sure to subscribe over on YouTube. We'll be doing a lot more visuals on those too. And if you have something specific, whether it's just the niche that you want me to do an example on to help give you a little bit more guidance, please feel free to DM me over on Instagram or drop it below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening to this episode, and I will see you next time.